All right. Sorry, I've got to let someone in real fast. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. There's not a whole lot of updates from last week's meeting, but I understand that some of you may not have been able to attend last week's meeting. So I do want to talk to you about the timeline, even though it hasn't changed from last week. Let me go ahead and share my screen really quick and just show you that. I think I'm going to, let's see, there we go. All right, so if you go, this has now been posted. We finally got permission to go ahead and make this official and post it on the 21st Century website. So if you go to the website, you will see updates to this. And Erica is really good about adding the videos for these office hour meetings to that calendar. So if you were not able to be at last week's meeting, I highly suggest you go back and watch the recording of it, because we did go over a lot of really good information. To some of you, it may be new information. And so that would be a really good thing for you to go review. We talked about some blending and braiding of funds. We went over a change to one of the forms. So I highly recommend you go back and watch last week's meeting if you weren't there. But just to let you know, let's see, what is today? Today's the 16th. So we are currently here in our schedule. And what I keep getting emails about and everybody's interested in knowing is, when is the application going to open up in EGAP? It has been built at this point. It did take a little bit longer than was expected, but I still think we're going to be able to meet our deadline of having it open up on February the 3rd. That is my biggest wish and hope. So I don't think that we'll be behind in that. It could potentially open before the 3rd. As soon as we have it ready to go, I'm going to go ahead and have it opened up. But I would suggest that you might want to wait until February the 3rd, because we will have the virtual EGAP application portal training on that day, where we'll walk you through the portal and how to go through it and what it looks like and that sort of thing. One thing everybody needs to know and keep in mind, it's funny, the things that I have nightmares about at night, but one thing that I mentioned last week, that we need to make sure that we get the word out to everyone. I am concerned for those who don't attend these meetings that they won't know. But we did have to build out 2 different portals for the application. I talked a little bit about this last week. For those of you who are doing a summer-only grant, you're only applying for funds to do a 21st Century program during the summer. Because we want to make sure those funds are accessible to you as early as possible once the grant has been awarded, we will actually be using FY25 funds to start your grant. For everybody else, for those of you who are doing a year-long program or an academic and, just an academic program, and your grant won't actually start until the fall, your first year's funds will come from the FY26 budget. But those of you who are starting early summer, those of you who are only applying for a summer-only program, your funds will start earlier than that. And so we actually had to create 2 different applications, which I didn't realize was going to be something. Guys, I keep telling you every week, I learn something new every day. And this was not something that I realized was going to need to be done, but we did have to create 2 different applications because of the funding year starting on a different year. And so those of you who are applying for summer-only grants your grant will actually be called, Cohort 25 Summer. But the rules and regulations that are in the RFA for Cohort 26 will still apply to you. It's just we're only changing the name for that program so that it is not confusing for our accounting department, because The reason why we changed the number of the cohort, up to this point, up to this year, we've always called it cohort 16, cohort 17, just in sequential order is how we've named our cohorts. But it often gets very confusing because sometimes it's really hard to tell what year a grant actually started on. And when you have multiple grants running at the same time, that can get confusing for both us and our accounting department. And so that's why we decided to change the way we name our cohorts to be based on the year that the grant starts. And so that's why this RFA is called Cohort 26, because we were thinking the grant would start in FY 26, not taking into consideration that if we did do the summer only program and started it this year, we would actually need to make those funds accessible prior to the FY 26 funds being released from the federal government. And so we need to use FY 20 funds to fund that grant for the first year. So now that I've rambled a ton, you just need to make sure that when you go into the EGAP portal, that you choose the right application. And we will try to make that as clear as possible in instructions and go over with that with everybody. But I still worry that we're going to have some people that fill out the wrong one. So if you have friends that are applying, please just kind of fill them in and let them know. Okay, so moving on, because we pushed back the date for the application to open to the 3rd, we have also, of course, postponed the date that the application is due. So that will be on February the 24th now. So you do have an extra month to have it prepared and get it in. We will have again, that training on February 3rd from 2 to 4, and it may run past 4, just fair warning. I don't know how long it will take, but I'm going to make sure that my schedule is clear so that we have plenty of time to go through the entire thing and answer any questions that you might have. And then we will do another RFA application office hours on February 10th, and then the applications will be due on February 24th. So we're getting there. I feel good about the progress we're making. Of course, things haven't stuck to the timeline I wanted, but I have learned that you just can't always get what you want, and you have to be flexible. So I'm learning to be flexible. And then even though we are delaying the application being due, we are still going to do our very best to release so ignore all this. This isn't really necessarily pertaining to any of you. This is just about the peer reviewers who are going to be reviewing the grants. But we plan to submit. We still hope to kind of stick to the rest of the schedule, mostly the same as it was before. Try to submit the grant winners to our state superintendent to have him sign. Of course, that has to be routed, and that does take some time. So we very much hope to have the announcement of the grant awards done by late April of 2025. Before it said April or early April. Now we're saying late. If we can get it done faster than that, we will. We just have to try to be as diligent as possible to make sure nothing else goes wrong and we don't have any other delays, so that we can make sure that those summer only programs have their funding. So again, we will announce those awards by late April, and then we will begin almost immediately the virtual training for those summer only subgrantees. You will have access to your funds as quickly as possible, basically as soon as you get. So this is something else I talked about last week, and I know I'm rambling and I need to give you a chance to ask questions. But another thing I mentioned last week is that once you've been awarded a grant, then the State Department will, the specialists here at the State Department will go back through your budget and your application and make sure that it is acceptable. We understand that some of you may be applying for this grant for the first time, and you may actually have some things in your budget that are not allowable, that you don't know are not allowable, or you may have things coded incorrectly or something to that effect. Something like that, that's a minor thing that can be fixed. That's not going to affect your application or affect you from getting the grant, but it's still something that we have to fix before we give you access to your funds. And so the way that will work is once the grant has been awarded, we will go and look through your budget and let you know of anything that needs to be changed within your budget, give you a chance to do that. Also, this would be the time when you would upload any MOUs that you did not already upload with your grant. If you look at the RFA, it does encourage you to upload MOUs when you submit the grant, but they don't have to be. They have to be submitted within 30 days of you getting the grant award or of the award being announced. So for those of you whose districts don't feel comfortable with you creating an MOA before the grant has been funded, you would have 30 days to get those MOUs turned in. And then once that is done and your budget looks good, then we will approve it and then you will have access to your funds. So that's how that works. It does, very much put us on a very tight timeline, but it's still, we hope, a very doable timeline for you to prepare for the summer grants. And then, of course, we have plenty of time to get those of you who are doing year-long or academic year grants for the fall to get you guys ready for that and to get you the training you need. So I'm going to stop sharing from my screen for a moment so that I can read your comments easier. Let's see. Give me just 1 second to get to the comments. Okay, so it says, where is the recording link for January 9th office hours? I sent it to Erica a couple of days ago. I know she was planning on sending it out in an email on Friday, but hopefully she has also posted it on the website. If not, then I will make sure that she has done that today and get that on there. Hey, Erica.
Hey, I'm working on uploading it now to the
Okay.
YouTube page. So
Okay, perfect.
it's gonna trickle down.
Okay, all right. So she'll get that uploaded, guys. So you'll have access to that. All right. Any other questions that you can think of right now? It's actually been a quiet week. I haven't had really hardly any questions come in through our email from sites, and so I didn't have anything to add. I've also sent Erica a Q&A document to upload to the website. I meant to send it to her last week, and it just slipped my mind, to be honest with you, and I remembered it this morning. So that's another thing that she's going to be uploading to the website, and it's just I can actually show it to you. It is just a document where I am trying to um, record any questions that get asked during the week and the answers to those questions so that everybody is seeing the answers and has that information so that, just try to make it fair for everyone. And so as questions come in, I do try to put it into that. I can't guarantee I put every question in there because sometimes I might actually answer a question while I'm on the road or something and don't have the ability to add it to the list immediately, and then I forget to go back and do it later. But I think I have a large majority of the questions in there that you might need answers to. Okay, so Erica just posted the link to last week's meeting if you want to go ahead and copy it from the chat. But again, she's also going to put it on the website as well. Okay. So other than those updates, I really don't have anything else to share. So I'm just going to wait it out and see if anyone has any questions. So this is in last week's recording. Oh, wait, here we go. Does Form 9 budget column require amounts? Okay, let me go look at Form 9 so I can see what you're talking about. Give me just 1 second. Because though I did help create these things, they are not always extremely fresh in my mind. So give me just 1 second. Pull that up. Oh, yes, the multi-year program design. Okay. Okay, so I wouldn't say you can put the budget amounts if you want to, but you don't have to be specific about those budget amounts in this form. However, if you do have it in your, but the one that you do have to be specific is, of course, your budget in EGAP. When you go to complete it's not a form, it's actually built within the EGAP application. And when you go to put your line items and things like that in, of course, that does have to be very to the penny specific as to how you're planning to spend your money. So because you have it there, you don't necessarily have to be specific here in this form. Actually, let me share my screen so everybody can see what I'm talking about. I apologize. Okay, so this form is very, very important though to your application, okay? Because really everything that you type into your application for many of the questions should revolve around this form. And again, you need to make sure, like, some of your performance goals and objectives have been given to you, but then there's some that you have to create yourself. And of course, you can add objectives and performance measures if you would like to the ones that have been given to you. But once you determine your objectives and then what your performance goals are going to be, that's when you pick and you choose your strategies and activities that you're going to do with the students or with the children to address those goals. And so you would list those strategies and activities here in this column. You'll also list the methods and the data sources and the methods that you're going to use to evaluate whether the activities and strategies that you have chosen to do are actually working. And so we highly encourage you to pick evaluation methods that are easily accessible, that occur throughout the year. Choose some sort of formative assessment that is, potentially already given to students at their schools. Work with your schools to make sure they understand that you are going to need access to that data. Make sure that when you fill out your contracts and that you talk about your partnership, that is clear, that they understand that they need to do certain things, especially if you're a CBO or an FBO and you're working with a public school. They need to understand that there's certain data that they need to provide to you on a regular basis. And there's certain things that you don't have access to, but you have to have in order to meet the requirements of this grant. And one of those things would be, evaluation methods that you're going to use to see if kids are improving, if their academics are getting better. And instead of spending time in the afternoon or during the summer giving another test after the kids have been given tests during the school day, instead of spending time doing those evaluations in your program, you really should just be able to use the testing that's given, during their regular school day. So that's where you need to think about that and put that in this column, and I guess it's the fourth column. And then you have your budget. And so everything in your budget should tie to these activities and strategies that you're going to do with the students, whether it's the personnel that you're going to hire to implement these strategies, whether it's the materials and supplies that you're going to use, whether you're contracting with a service and bringing it in to provide something, to provide some sort of service to the students, or you've got an expert coming in to work with the students. Whatever that may be, it should be tied to the strategies and activities, which are tied to your objectives and your performance measures, right? So, so you don't necessarily have to list exactly the amounts of money that you're spending here, but if it's in your budget, it should also be in one of these, in here. It should also be in this form, in this last column. Everything should be tied and related to each other. Okay, let me see if I can get back to questions without stopping sharing. Here we go. Okay. All right, for those experts and contractors providing services for students, are they required to complete an MOU as specified in the RFA? Yes. Anytime you contract with someone that is not an employee of, either the school system or the FBO or the CBO, then you are going, anytime you're spending 21st century funds on someone that is an outside contractor, you do have to create an MOU or a contract. An MOU, MOA, contract, we use those words interchangeably. They all mean the same thing. They are a they are a legal binding contract saying what services are going to be provided, how much you're going to pay these people, per hour, what the total amount of the contract will be, the number of hours that you plan to pay them for. And then there's other wording that really, I've mentioned this, and I know your guys are probably like, when is this ever going to be given to us? But there is some wording from the federal government that really should be in your contract as well. And it's on my to-do list. It's just my to-do list is extremely long, to get you guys an updated MOU loaded that has that wording included. It's just kind of one of those things. I'm choosing my battles, and that's not something that we've necessarily required in the past. And so we're going to slowly get that required and get that into our contracts, because, we of course already have programs in place that have contracts that don't have that wording in it, even though it should. We're not going to make people do new contracts unless the feds tell us we have to. We are just going to slowly get those out, the old contracts out, and bring in the new ones that have all of the parts that really they're supposed to have. So again, I will try to get that out. It's on my to-do list. It's just, there's so much to do. But we will get those out. And if you upload, an MOU, as long as it has the items that is specified in the grant that need to be in your MOU, that's fine. Okay, can you go into detail about the characters for each component? Also, can you use charts within the RFA? That is a good question. I don't know. I don't believe, but I'm not sure if you're able to upload a chart into eGap into the comment box. I've never seen anybody do it before, so I want to say no, but I'm not positive. I will find out the answer to that, probably today. I'll make sure I ask that. So let me make a note of that. Let's go about charts.
Amanda,
Okay.
I'm keeping a list of the questions that need
Oh,
to have
thank
responses.
you. Thank you, Carla. I appreciate that. Okay, so the characters for each component. So let me, if you go to the RFA itself and go towards the end of the RFA where we have the rubric for the peer reviewers to score your application, that is included in the RFA, so you can see what we're going to be looking for or what they're going to be looking for when they score your application. The questions are broken down in eGap in the same way they are in that scoring rubric. So there is a character limit within the eGap for each long answer question. I think the character limit is 5,000 characters. And so for questions that I knew were going to take probably more than 5,000 characters to answer, we broke those questions down so that you were not having to answer the entire thing or do the entire component in one answer box. So it's broken down the same way it is in that rubric. So you can refer to that and you can go ahead and start planning your answers. I would highly suggest that you go ahead and be working on the answers to those questions and just putting them into like a Word document or something like that, that you could easily copy and paste into eGap when the application opens up. That way you can go ahead and fix any grammar or spelling or whatever errors that you might have within Word and get it exactly the way you want it to look, and then just copy and paste it over into eGap. But yes, if you refer to that rubric that's in the RFA, you can see how the questions are broken down. And we hopefully that you won't have any issues with the character limitation since most of the questions have been broken down, hopefully enough that you won't have a problem with that. Okay, has the FAQs been linked? I just sent that document to Erica before this meeting started, so probably not. But give her a little bit of time. I'm sure that she will get that uploaded today into the website. So you can refer back to the 21st century, the Alabama 21st century website, and she should have that uploaded hopefully today. She says she's working on it, but it's not linked yet. So it's sometimes things like that take a little time. So, and that's my fault because I just sent it to her today. Will EGAP have a character count per component? I think I've already answered that. It's 5,000 characters per component. But again, each component, some of the components, the longer ones have been broken down into parts. So that way you have plenty of space to put your answers in. Okay, could I give a little guidance on when a school system should apply for one or more grants? Okay, that's a great question. So let's say, so there's often confusion in what it means to have multiple grants, okay, or multiple sites. So if an LEA is applying for a 21st century grant, and let's say they want to have 5 different sites or schools that are participating in 21st century, okay, they will, when they go into EGAP, at least this is the way I haven't seen it yet. I'm going to look at it as soon as this meeting is over. But the way I requested for it to be done is you'll go in and you'll fill out your information for the overall, for the basically the fiscal agent of the grant will go in first. So whether you're a CBO or an LEA, your information will go in first. And then you will go from there and be taken to basically where you can break out into your different sites that you plan to have. If you're going to have 5 schools or 5 sites, you will basically do 5 different applications, and you will be eligible to get 5 different grants. The sub-grant, you would be considered the sub-grantee. The LEA would be the sub-grantee. We, as the State Department, are the grantee. So the funds come from the federal government to us. So we are the grantee, and then you guys are the sub-grantee. We sub-grant the funds out to the LEAs and the CBOs and the FBOs. So if you want to have 5 different sites, then you can apply for 5 different grants. Now, the question has come up, well, what if I want to put 2 schools under the same grant? That's in that frequently asked question document, and I talked about it a little bit last week. I understand people want to do that if maybe they are serving a couple of really small schools and they don't have enough students or they don't believe they're going to have enough students to participate to meet the minimum requirements of the grant. So if you remember, according to the federal government, each grant should be funded at least $50,000 in order to have a robust program, in order to run, really have a good program and be able to run it. Okay, so I understand if you have, maybe you don't have very much participation, you wanting to maybe combine 2 schools together and write 1 grant for the 2 schools, and that way you can add the student number together. That's doable. It's been done in the past. I just feel like it is a harder way to go unless maybe the 2 schools that you're wanting to write it for are on the same campus. Maybe you're wanting to do an elementary school and the middle school at the same time, and they're literally right next door to each other. That's fine. Or maybe they're nearby, and they have that situation again where they're small schools and you want to, you don't have enough students to have a good program if you just count the number of students at one school. it's when you try to combine two schools that are completely different that you might have some issues, because as you know, you have to go through here and you have to do performance goals and performance objectives and things like that, according to this form right here that you have to fill out. And if you're having to do this for both younger elementary age kids and then say maybe high school kids, your objectives or your performance goals, or maybe just your strategies and activities are going to look completely different between those two groups of students. And so it may be more difficult for you to express what you plan to do for those two, varying groups of students. But on the flip side of that, I understand that it might be even a K-12 school where you will have just one site, but you are serving a wide range of students. So it can be done. You can talk about the strategies and activities for your kindergartners versus your third graders versus your eighth graders versus your 11th graders. It's just going to make it a little bit harder for you, number one, to meet that character limit, but it can definitely be done. Another thing to consider is if you're trying to put two sites together within one grant or two schools together within one grant, you really need to have an adult that's a leader in each of those two schools, which means you would need two site coordinators. And if you're only applying for that one grant to cover those two schools, you still have to consider that 30% cap on administrative costs. And so it may make it more difficult for you to pay those administrators what they deserve to be paid, because you're literally having to split what would typically be one person's salary into two. You would have your program director that gets paid from that, but then you also have your site coordinators. There can be other positions that are paid through that portion as well. But if you're having to hire, let's say, two site coordinators, one for each site, and maybe two data entry people, one for each site that helps with your data entry, you're gonna meet that, you're gonna hit that cap really, really quickly. And so if you can, I suggest you write a different grant for each of the sites you plan to have. Yes, that's a lot of work. We understand that, but this is also going to get you a lot more money. It's going to be able to make it where you can tailor each school for their specific needs, which is what this is supposed to be about. And you're not going to have to worry about, maxing out your administrative, funds and things like that, because you're trying to take those funds and stretch them between two different schools. So hopefully I answered your question, but if you have any other more specific questions, then please let me know. I'm going to stop sharing my screen again so that I can see you guys better. Okay. If one school is hosting the program and students will be transported to the host site, will there still be a need for multiple site coordinators? No. You only need one site coordinator per physical building site. And so if that's the case and you're transporting kids over to the site, that's perfectly fine. You would just need the one. You would only need to hire, I would think, unless Alicia or Eric can think of something that I'm not thinking, that I haven't considered. You would only need to hire two site coordinators within one grant, as if they're like in totally different buildings away from each other, and you need to have an adult that's in charge in each of those buildings. Now, potentially, if the buildings were literally side by side right next door to each other, you probably could get away with just one site coordinator. But that's going to be up to you. You know your students, you know your teachers and your staff, whether that's feasible or not. What other questions do we have? All right. While I'm waiting for other questions to pop up, I do want to show, so I just want to go ahead and show you guys something that did come up last week. It'll be in last week's recording, but still it's important information. We did have to make a change. I'm trying to pull it up. I should have already had it up. Sorry. We did have to make a change to one of the forms. It has been uploaded now, I believe, or it should have been. And that would be Form 1. So let me pull that up really quick. Give me just a second. Takes me forever to get this thing sometimes. Okay. So Form 1 is the application cover page. Go ahead and share my screen again. And let me make this a little bit bigger so you can see it better. So something that came up that I did not take into consideration when we kind of created this form and when we decided that we were going to change the way that we were going to determine how much money each site would get. At the time I was thinking, I hadn't, at the time I was still very, very new to the program and I wasn't necessarily aware, I think, anyway, it doesn't matter. But anyway, I didn't really realize that sometimes a program may have a very different number of kids that participate during the summer as they do during the school year. So you may only have like 50 kids that participate during the school year, but then they have 100 or 150 or 200 kids that participate during the summer because they do like a big, robust summer program. And so the question came, well, if we add those kids together, do we go ahead and add in all those extra summer kids and apply them to the entire year, or what? How do we need to do that? And so thinking about the most equitable way to make this, to do this, we really realized that we needed to split the base funding calculation into the academic year and the summer. So now it used to just be one calculation where you would put all of your students for the whole year and then multiply that by the program hours. Well, now we're splitting that apart so that it will take into account if you've got a very different number of children that participate in the summer versus the school year. So now you will just do those separately from each other. So you'll put in the number of students that you plan to participate during the academic year times the number of program hours just for the academic year times $6 to find out your academic year base funding. And then you'll do the same for summer. If you are having a summer program, you'll put in the number of students that you plan to participate, the number of hours of your summer program, and multiply that by 6, and that will give you your summer base funding. And then you'll add in your transportation supplement or supplements, depending on whether you're rural or not, to figure out what your total fund amount request will be. So, and I just realized something else that probably should have been changed too, but I'm not going to change it at this point. But I believe, and I will check this, in EGAP, there will be the option. It will add up how much funding that you qualify for, but there will be an option for you to request less funding than what you qualify for if you want to. I never realized that that would be an issue, but it has been brought up from some people who have had 21st century grants in the past or have one currently that are about to expire. They basically stated that they already have a hard enough time spending the money that they get at 200,000 that they would actually qualify for more than 200,000, but they really don't want the extra funds, and that's perfectly fine. So there is a place within EGAP that for you to put the actual amount that you would like to get if it is different or if it's less than the amount of funds that you actually qualify for. So just want to throw that out there. So of course, if you've already had this form filled out and signed by the appropriate people, then you don't, I mean, let's see who it has to be signed by the project manager and the LEA superintendent or an authorized official. If you've already had the other form filled out and it's ready to be uploaded, that's fine. It's still going to make you separated in EGAP though. So just keep that in mind, that if you do have the older version of this form, your application is not going to be turned away because of that. Because that was, our fault, or my fault really. But when you go into ECAP, it will ask you to actually put those numbers in separately to do the calculation. So just want you to keep that in mind. Okay. What typically makes schools' applications more competitive from an applicant perspective? That's a great question that I don't know that I'm extremely qualified to answer, because this will be my first RFA, my first grant program. And of course, Erica, if you want to chime in, you're welcome to, or I don't know, I don't think Alicia is able to listen in, but if she's here, she's welcome to chime in. What I can say is that having everything that the RFA asks for is really important. Making sure that well, for one thing, we're going to do our very best this year to go to, so it's in the RFA, but just to kind of verbally walk you through it, we have every intention to, as the applications are submitted, to have one of our ALSDE specialists look at it and make sure it does have all of the parts, everything that's requested, everything's been filled out before we pass it on to a grant reviewer to review it. Unfortunately, if it doesn't have all the parts, if it doesn't have everything uploaded that's supposed to be uploaded, or there's questions that are not answered, we're not going to pay somebody to score an application that's incomplete. So that is your number one top priority, is making sure that you have answered every question. Even if the answer is not applicable, write that it's not applicable and explain why. Don't leave anything blank. Put an answer for every question. Try to explain why it's not applicable to you if that's the case. Make sure you upload all the documentation that you're supposed to upload. Again, with the MOUs, if you can upload them, if you can go ahead and get those done, then please do. But it is not going to be a requirement initially, for the application, but you will have to have those uploaded within 30 days of getting the grant. Or at least if you want to start paying those people right away, you will. And for those of you who don't know, as you go through the year, if you plan to, let's say that you write a grant and you plan, you're writing a year-long grant and you plan to do, maybe you're going to have an expert gardener come in during the summer to do a community garden. I'm just throwing that out there. And you've got an expert garden club, leader, whatever, that's going to come in and do that, and you're contracting with that person to come in. Well, you don't really need an MOA for that person in August or September, when they're really not going to actually be working with the kids until the following June or July. So we understand that. You don't have to have an MOU uploaded for those people. However, we're going to ask you to take that person out of your budget for now, put those funds into materials and supplies, and then when it comes time for you to hire that person, then you will do a budget revision. You will move those funds over from materials and supplies over into purchase services, and upload your MOU for that expert, and we will approve it, and you will, hopefully, and you will go about your business. And so that's kind of how that works. Okay, so Erica has chimed in. I just saw it pop up. So let me scroll down. So Erica said, using the scoring rubric as a guide when writing to ensure you're hitting the key things that the peer reviewers will be looking for. So yes, that's a great suggestion. So again, I haven't been through this before, so I can't give you like scenarios or anything of why applications have not gotten grants in the past, or why certain ones have, but I do know just from grant writing myself, you know, in other jobs and things that I've had in education, I know the number one key thing is to answer every question that's asked of you to answer. That's in this, that's in any kind of grant you're going to write for, is make sure that you answer all the questions. When you leave things blank, that's when you have a problem, and that's when you disqualify yourself from getting the grant. If you're not sure how to answer a question, please reach out to us and we will help you. Okay, so it says if we receive Title V rural and low income funds, will we qualify for rural funds? You will if you plan to provide transportation. So that is that being rural is what applies. It will affect your transportation supplement if you are providing transportation to your students. And so that's when you can qualify for that extra funding. So when I say transportation, I mean either if you're doing an after school program, either you're busing kids home, or like the example, like the question that was asked a little while ago, if you're busing kids from one school to another to get them all in one location to have the program, that would be included in a transportation, that would qualify for a transportation supplement. Also, if you're doing a summer program and you're picking kids up and taking them to the program and then taking them home, of course, that would qualify for transportation. So if you are providing transportation to the students and you do receive Title V rural and low income funds, or if you qualify for them, even if you don't necessarily receive them, but you qualify for them, then yes, you would actually qualify for that extra supplement for transportation. So instead of getting $10,000 extra dollars, you would qualify for an additional $20,000 for transportation. And then this is another thing, a question that I answered last week. You know, someone asked if those transportation funds have to be spent on transportation. So say, yes, we're providing transportation and we're rural and we get $20,000 in, but we don't need the entire $20,000 to supply the transportation we're providing. Do we have to spend that money on transportation? So the answer to that question is, as long as you're doing what you said you were going to do in your RFA, you're providing the transportation you said you were going to provide. If you have money left over, no, you don't have to spend that on transportation. Now, if you say you're going to provide transportation and then for some reason you end up not providing transportation, then that money does not need to be spent on anything else. And you need to make us aware of that as soon as possible so that we can either remove that from the grant or just make sure that we don't add it to your grant the following year if you're not going to provide transportation. Okay, on 4A, it states evidence experience to succeed. If we have a 21st century grant now, do we elaborate on our success from it? Okay, so I'm assuming you're talking about component 4A of the grant. I'm sorry, I just want to see, let me just pull it up really quick. Is it RFA? Here we go. Okay. Go down to 4A. And I'm assuming you're talking about from the rubric, so. I may have just gone past it. Okay, here we go. So C, B. Okay. Okay, here we go. All right. 4A is talking about management. And it wants you to provide evidence of successful experience or the capacity to succeed in providing educational and enrichment activities to complement and enhance academic performance. So yes, if you've had a 21st century grant now or in the past and it was successful, this is where you would need to mention that. Even if you haven't had a 21st century grant, if you have been running an after school program or a summer program at your LEA or at your CBO, and you get great success from that, then this is where you can brag on yourself a little bit and talk about the programs that you have had experiences with and how they were successful. because we want to make sure these funds go to people who understand after school programs, and they understand summer programs, and understand, how they need to work and how they need to run. And so it does make us feel better if you've done it before in the past. Not to say that if you haven't, you're not going to get, awarded a grant, but we would like to see that you have some sort of leadership capability, that you've had in the past. Every now and then we have a situation where a grant is written by, say, a grant writer or something, and we end up getting people hired to do the work that really, they didn't write the grant. They don't really understand what their application said they were going to do, and they've never ran a 21st century program in the past, or an after school program. And it really does end up being a hot mess, to put it mildly. Not to say that we can't tackle that and provide support and try to get those people where they need to be in working, on the grant. Everybody's got to start somewhere, and we completely understand that. But it always is, considering that we are the fiscal management of these funds, it always does make us feel better to make sure that we're providing them to people who have experience if possible. All right. What other questions do you guys have? Anything that's in the RFA that you're confused about? Not sure how to answer? We've got 5 minutes left, so I'm just gonna wait until I hear any other questions from anyone. And then going back to, I'm gonna go back and look at our timeline while I'm waiting. Here we go. So our next application office hours will be, today's the 16th. Oh, by the way, here's your reminder that the intent to apply letters are due tomorrow. Again, these are not mandatory. If you don't get it in by tomorrow, then that's fine. You can submit it late. I'm not turning it off tomorrow by any means, but this does help us know how many grant reviewers to hire. We have had a nice big slew of grant reviewer applications come in, so I'm super excited about that. But we need to know how many people to hire, and so you completing that form as soon as possible really does help us in that, because we have to hire enough. I think each application is reviewed 3 times by 3 different reviewers, and so it does take a large number of people to review these grants, and so please make sure that you get that in if you haven't done so already. Again, it's not mandatory, but it is definitely appreciated if you fill that out. And then our next office hours will be on January 23rd from 3:30 to 4:30. All right, so Yvonne needs clarification about something, but she's typing, so take your time. Okay. In the past, grades were only used for secondary site objectives based on required objectives for the new grants. Grades are now required for K-5. Okay, so I'm assuming you're referring to, oh, this is from Penny, I'm sorry. So I'm assuming you're referring to the multi-year, let me pull that back up, the Form 9 again. So let me share that again. Well, I don't know that I need to share it, but well, yeah, let me share it so you can see what I think. If I'm wrong about where this question is coming from, please let me know. But so if you see this is a performance goal that's been provided to you. So it's, for example, it'll say the percentage of regular program participants who will increase their math grade by half a letter grade or 5 percentage points from the first marking period to the last marking period of each academic year. Okay, so if you're at a school that doesn't necessarily do grades like letter grades or number grades or that sort of thing, this question has come up before, and it was just something that I had never considered. I always taught high school, so you know, I didn't think about the fact that some grades may not do actual number grades. Even though I had kids, I should have known that. But anyway, I digress. If that's the case, then just state in the, you can change this if you need to. Or what you could do is add to it and just say that instead of looking at letter grades, you're going to look at another measure. So even if you're not doing letter grades, there's got to be something that you're doing, some sort of formative assessment, some sort of testing that you're doing to see if if the kids at the school are improving. And so whatever that is, you can use that as your method. And if it doesn't make sense to compare it from the first marking period to the last marking period, then tell me what you will use that is comparable to this objective. Okay, so if you can use this objective, this is what we would prefer for you to do. And the reason why we provided some of these objectives for you is because we would like to be able to look at the state as a whole and determine how our state program is doing as a whole. And so if we have similar objectives, it will be easier for us to do that. Because if we're having to compare different types of evaluation sources with each other, it's going to be a little bit harder for us to see those patterns and see how our state is doing as a whole. However, if you don't do grades this way, then that's fine. You're not going to be punished for it. Just explain to us what you are going to do instead. We still want to see, and the main thing here is that we're seeing an increase in math, in the child's academics in their math. So, and we want to see at least 50% of those kids have an increase. And here it's, you know, by half a letter grade or 5 percentage points. Figure out something that's comparable to that, and you're welcome to put that into your objective. You may want to put a little note in parentheses or something that just says, you know, we do not do letter grade scores at our school, so we are using this instead. Okay. Okay, Yvonne's going to reach out, so that's fine. Can we use iReady math and reading scores instead of letter grades? Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Now, I will say this, which we still have this issue with the elementary grades, is I was thinking about the GEPRA data. Please keep in mind that there's certain data that we have to report to the federal government. One of those things is grades, but we do understand, like, I think it's GPA, and we understand that like lower grades don't keep up with student GPA. So we do report letter grades instead of the GPA, or that's how we, you know, report that. And so we will expect that to be reported at some point or another for GEPRA. We can pull some of that. Yeah, we use the GPA for middle and high school, but for the lower elementary, we use something else. So just keep in mind that if you do choose another evaluation method, we're still going to need you to provide us potentially some letter grades for those lower grade students, if that applies to you, for our GEPRA measures. But a lot of times we can pull that information from PowerSchool. So it may not be that you actually have to physically type it in, but I just wanted to put that out there. Okay, K-5 schools are required to have both IA and IB. Yes. So yes, unless so you need to have, okay, so I see the difference here. So in one, it's saying that there should be an increase in the letter grade, and in other, there should be an increase in state standardized assessments from the prior year to the current year. The only way that I could see where you wouldn't have to do IB is if your students don't have a state assessment for that year. And if that's the case, then you would need to put that for the students who don't have a state assessment given to them for that year. You would not have to do IB. Okay, so Derek asked about, does he need to resubmit the intent to apply form because he's already submitted it? No, you don't need to. If you've submitted it once, it's the same link as it was before, and we already should have your information. So don't put it in again. All right, any other questions? So again, when it comes to answering these questions or talking about these I'm sorry, not the performance goal, but the objectives, your performance measures that you're going to look at. If what has been given to you and you've been in the RFA does not work for your school for whatever reason, please explain that and then give an alternative and comparable method that you're going to use. Or give a reason why you can't do this performance goal. So in the example where maybe you're going to serve a certain grade level that doesn't have any kind of state assessment that year, please explain that grade level doesn't have a state assessment, but you should have some grade levels that do. In math and in English, I know they may not test every year, but they do test, throughout child, they test during several years in elementary school and during several years in the other grades as well, if not every year. So, your program really shouldn't be serving just one grade, right? So you should have something to put there. So I just want to reiterate, don't leave it blank. Explain why you're not answering the question if that's the case. Or explain why you're not coming up with strategies and activities to support that objective if it's something that you really can't do with your students. Explain that so that if the person who's reviewing your application is just kind of going through it quickly, which we may have to do just because we're now on a very limited time of reviewing and getting them scored. You don't want them to see blanks and then just think that you didn't answer all the questions. So make sure you put something. Are the target percentages non-negotiable? I wouldn't say they're non-negotiable, but if you do want to use a different percentage, then I would suggest you have a good reasoning for it, okay? Yeah. If you want to increase it, I don't have any problem with that. If you want to decrease that percentage, then you better have a really good reason why that needs to be decreased, of why you want to target less than, because in most cases, it's just half the population of your kids. Now, sometimes it's higher, 92%, when you're looking at attendance, So, so if you want to change that percentage, please make sure you have a very good reason to do so and explain that in your narrative. All right. Well, I hate to do this, but I have to end because I have another meeting coming up. But if you think of questions throughout the week, please don't forget that you can always email the EANS, I'm sorry, that's another program I used to be over. Sorry, you can always email the 21st Century email address, and we will make sure that we respond to your question and add it to the frequently asked questions. It also helps me prepare for these meetings as they come up. If you send me questions ahead of time, if as you think of them, so that if I don't know the answer right off the top of my head, I can prepare and find out what the answer is, which always makes me feel a little bit more comfortable. But of course, can't know everything about everything. So I'm the first one to say, you know, if I don't know the answer to something, I will find out and let you know. Again, I will remember that we need to find out whether you can put charts into eGap. I don't think you're going to be able to, but I will find that out for sure very shortly, and make sure that we address that at the very least in next week's meeting, if I'm not able to get it out before then. All right. Thank you all so much for being here. We will see you guys next week. Again, that is, I had it pulled up, that is next week on January 23rd, which is what day of the week? Sorry. January 23rd is Thursday. So next Thursday from 3:30 to 4:30, we will see each other then. And I hope you have a very great weekend, the rest of your week and weekend, and we'll see you next week. Thank you guys so much.